Well, there was this great bar in the Lower East Side of New York at 12th Street and Avenue B called Stanley's Bar, and all the painters went there. And one night in 1962, around the fall, I was in there with the novelist H.L. Humes, Doc Humes, and he said, "Hey, there's a magician I know." So I went over and I was introduced to Harry Smith, whom I knew not as a great ethnomusicologist or folklorist, but as a filmmaker. He was famous for his hand-drawn films. So I met him that night because I had Egyptian eyes of Horus painted on my gym socks, which gave me a rapport with Harry immediately. So we started hanging out, and then I started, under his influence, making films later on in '63, and he was my guru. He showed me what cameras to buy, and said get an old Bell & Howell battle camera from the Korean War because you can drop it, and that's what I did. And so he showed me how to make films. And then through him I met Jonas Mekas, and I became, for a brief flash, an underground filmmaker type. Then later, Thule and I formed the Fugs, and by then I knew of Harry's musical connections. I slowly became aware of this great anthology he had done. I formed a bookstore in the Lower East Side on 10th Street next to Thule's house, and Harry would hang out there. My bookstore was very, very well known for its time. It was the only mecca for the avant-garde plus the happening movement, and we were in the civil rights movement, and we were in the rock and roll folk movement. It was like everybody came there. Well, it was a happy confluence of many rivers of Americana right at that point. There was the civil rights movement with all the songs. When I heard Pete Seeger saying "We Shall Overcome," or we sang "Down by the Riverside" when the Klan was surrounding our church in Tennessee, I went through all those powerful singing experiences when you think you might die. And you sing, what do you sing? You sing these 3-chord black gospel hymns. So that was it. Then there was the happening movement, which was Alan Capro, Klaus Oldenburg. My bookstore was right around the corner from where Oldenburg had his happenings. I mean, a happening was great. You got a loft, you got 14 stock tanks full of grapes, you had 2 naked people, and the rest were jumping up and down in the grapes, and you were all yodeling, and that you could call it art. Harry would hang out too. And then he said, well, I know this guy named Mo Ash, who has Folkways Records, and I have a connection. And he said, well, we've got to float it by Mo. So he told Mo that we were the Fugs jug band, not just the Fugs. So he floated this by Mo. And in the spring, in April of '65, we, through Harry Smith, got into a little recording studio up on 46th or 48th Street. And we didn't even know that you were supposed to face the microphones. And Harry was in the recording studio and shows his ethnomusicologist bent in that he had the sound engineer record everything, not just our takes. So all our babble, all our conversation, even when Folkways came in for us to sign the $40 checks, that was all on tape. So Harry had a unique method of producing. He was our producer. He did 2 things during the sessions, other than have the genius to record everything. He said 3 words: just get going. So we sort of milled in front of the microphones, and we did nonstop all our songs twice, which has been that session has been the basis for countless CDs and reissues, and then we even put the babble in between takes now, since he had it all recorded. And then I learned from Harry how he was very professional. He told me, he would give me really good advice. He says, if you get the best equipment you can get, and just not get it very much of it, but get the best. He says, I always wear the best shoes because it lasts long. And he had really wonderful editing technique. He taught, we went up to Folkways to edit this, and he was able to, he was a very sophisticated editor, and he had good timing. So we'd know, I didn't know anything about the, rock and roll bands have fist fights trying to figure out how many seconds to leave between. Harry had an uncanny sense of flow. He was a genius at Rhapsody, at stitching. So he would work these one takes. We were Johnny one take, and he would work a flow. So it was wonderful working with him on those reel-to-reel tape equipment up at Folkways. So and then he had an angry, dark, mean side. For instance, I would give him money. He would come into my bookstore, and he was quite petulant. He had a history of tearing up his own. He made these wonderful hand-drawn films to Thelonious Monk music and stuff. And occasionally he would get angry. He was a type of artist. It was as if Da Vinci said, oh, I'm angry. And he'd tear up the Mona Lisa or the Temptation of St. Anne or something. You know. So he came into my bookstore in June 8th, 1965. That was the Peace-Eye bookstore where we found the Fugs, and it wanted $2. And he had with him a book called Cheyenne and Arapaho Music by Francis Densmore. He had another book called North American Indian Musical Styles. And then he had one of the most unusual books ever carried into the Peace-Eye bookstore by anybody, Place Names of the Kruger National Park. Anyway, so he got angry, he tore these up. And I thought, I better save these. And he also tore up, he had this wonderful, History of the World at Print that he had. And he went, that's torn up too. Harry cost me 10 grand by doing that. But so the Harry, I still got him. My man, I think of you all the time. That's the Harrys. And then my wife knew him more. And then he was a collector. He went to Anadarko, Oklahoma after he did the Fugs thing that summer, 65, and he would call up for bail money and stuff. We were always mailing him bail money because he'd always get picked, because he told me he liked to be in the drunk tank with the Indians, because that's where he really got, and he became conversant in their peyote rituals, so he had quite a memory. And he would come into my bookstore with these string games. He says, yes, I learned, these Aborigines, and he would tell these long, involved mythological tales, doing these we're not talking cat's paw, we're talking complicated spiderweb type things he would do in my bookstore. So he was had a really top-ranked mind. He would, then later he would come to our house, he collected quilt patches. He had these, so we'd go to his hotel room at the Chelsea, and he'd have these these cabinets full of these patches. Then he collected, Mennonite or Pennsylvania Dutch tools. He had a collection of those. He gave Miriam some. So he was always sharing. He would always give. So in our house, still in Woodstock, New York, we have all kinds of. We have his Egyptian spoon he gave us. We have an old plane from the Mennonites or Quakers or somewhere in Pennsylvania. So he was and just like when he did the anthology for Folkways, he was like this gigantic data squirrel. He would go, I've read stories how he would go out, like equivalent of people who go out to garage sales now looking for first editions of Hemingway that somebody's great aunt died and they didn't know. So he did the same thing with very obscure things from the 20s and 30s, and it was the only one that's, look, there's a difference. It's all out there. It's the person who can gather it into a proper sequence. There's the genius. Sequencing is the 20th century genius in the era where there's so much stuff. It's the genius is gathering the stuff and creating a web of it, or a stitch, or a rhapsody. So he was Harry Smith. I salute you, Harry. You were kind of grumpy, but hey, so was Charles Dickens, He would look at, Thule and I came into my bookstore. We were poets, and in the course of about 4 weeks, in early 1965, we wrote about 80 or 90 songs. Harry would hang out too. Then he mentioned this Folkways and this Mo Ashcraft. So I was coming at it out of poetry, and I just graduated from New York University. My mind was not attuned, like as was John Sebastian or others, to the nuances of this great collection. I didn't even know Sam Charters. I didn't know any of these people. But I knew of him as a great mind, because I could see how, because he came into my bookstore, he was studying the Crow language. He had a Crow dictionary, and then when he did those string games, and then when I went to his house up in the 70s, and I saw he had this furniture, that hand-painted furniture with lightning bolts hanging. So I knew this guy was, I'd known Allen Ginsberg by then, so I knew that he had a mind, and I also began to know other people like Burroughs and Robert Duncan, and I was corresponding with Charles Olson with Diane DePrima was a friend. So I knew these really intelligent people, and he fit right in with them. He had a very, very top-rank mind. But he had that Kerouac factor, the unself-confident egomania. I think his self-destruction and the way why he would destroy a great thing like he did on the wall. He had a terrible conflict somewhere in his mind about his own worth, I think, because why would he destroy such great art if he didn't have a real inner conflict? Harry liked the idiosyncratic wild man aspect of our tunes. And he liked you can see it in his anthology. You see that My Grave is Swept Clean. He had he had a fine sense for it. It was the Indian's adage: you tell a good story and the whole world would listen. So you want a good little story, tell it with a little flair. You don't have to be Caruso or Pavarotti or have a voice as good as the early Joan Baez. You could sort of belt it out and make a few mistakes and turn around, and it was still art. So we were grateful to Harry, wherever you are, Harry.
Nor a threat stain her